cruel capitalism as the cruelest form of capitalism ever known to man. They embraced it. They deemed themselves Christians. You see what that is?
Right.
Ain't that interesting?
Well,
1932. And,
yes.
So they call that one nation under God.
Yeah, but how hypocritical is that when you say one nation under God and you dismiss all other principles of the Ten Commandments about thou shalt not kill.
Right.
But yet you killed every step of the way in your effort to claim that this country is built on inclusion and the land of the free, home of the brave, and you could make a way and make a living for yourself with all these gatekeeping barriers. All the gatekeeping barriers, racism, structural racism, institutional racism, slavery, all of these things that go total contradictory towards what the whole philosophy of the country claims it stands for. And like I say, again, if you are a nation that says this is a nation melting pot for the people, all cultures, why did you kill the people that you came here, that you say you discovered this land for? Why did you kill the inhabitants? I mean, you killed off the Indians so bad that they are now put on reservations. And slaves have become the consumers of this nation. And when I say that, I mean slaves have become the consumer. Our generation after generation are now consumers of the marketplace. We don't make anything. We don't manufacture anything for world trade or global trade. We just consume. So America, to me, we make up 40-50% of the population, and we consume probably almost 100% of what the market bears. It's a ridiculous paradox. It's a ridiculous paradox because, like you said, we're so caught up in the European mindset that we forget who we are as a people. We buy into them so much and what they say and what they do. It's like they baptized us in their culture. And we say to them, "Oh, master, you hurt, I'm hurt." Even in the midst while they're taking from us and oppressing us and moving the bar every time we get a whiff of some new knowledge or get a step ahead of them in their competition, they move the bar. They make it much more difficult. Voter suppression. But we shouldn't be buying into their system. Their system is so tricky. It's like the witch saying, "Come eat at my table and show you all this wonderful food," but every time you eat from it, you get sick. But it's the only place where you can go to eat. You know what I'm saying? We keep eating from that table because they have made it so that we can't eat for ourselves. They have all the money. They've taken all the resources out of our communities. So we have to go to them. Or do we? This is the question. Or do we? Can we do like the Asians did? Save our damn pennies? Learn to save our pennies until we grow as a nation, within a nation? China did it. They worked for the world, building products and making products for pennies for decades until they grew to the point where nations owed them. And when nations owe you, your currency goes up and theirs goes down. Can China get somebody to buy America's debt to them? No. Nobody's want to buy America's debt because the EU's debt is fractured. People are breaking off from the EU. They don't like the EU, the European Union. They don't like it. They don't want to combine. France doesn't want to combine its dollar with the EU, and Australia don't want to do it. Great Britain don't want to do it. They want to Brexit. They want to BritX. They want to Brexit. That's what they call it. But so who wants to buy America's debt? You know, debt is worth money according to the credit market under capitalism. If you have debt, the more debt you have, the more manageable debt you have, the more you're worth, right? But in this sense, bad debt that hasn't been paid, nobody wants to buy it on top dollar. So that means the debt is cheapened. You can sell it for the lowest on the market if you want to get rid of it. You know, your debt might get sold to financial CST. They buy it. Once they see what they can get out of you to pay back, then they sell it to somebody else because the person won't pay it. So after a certain amount of years, that debt just goes off. The insurance company or somebody pays it. Somebody pays the debt, but it's probably been paid more than once. Because once you buy it and you can't get it, that insurance company will back that company to get it. So they keep robbing insurance companies. But in any case, that's what our nation is. Its dollar is it's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, and it owes China money, and it's got a bad relationship with China. And China is making moves with Africa, and they're not worried about the EU. They ain't worried about Germany, and they ain't worried about Russia, even though Russia may be their friend. And I don't think Russia's our enemy, to be honest with you. I think that the U.S. has had a bad taste in their mouth about Russia since Stalin and since World War II, since Russia helped to beat the war against Hitler. They've been hating him ever since. They never talk about it in history, but it was Russia that beat that last front in the cold, in the snow, in white military uniforms that camouflage themselves in the ships. They're the ones who beat Germany, who won on that last front. And to the point to say that the U.S. has always been envious of that. They want to say that they helped to win World War II. Well, they didn't. We were called in last, really. And then we was hit on the back end from Japan in Honolulu. So when we talk about, we helped win World War II, trust me, when you did the Battle of the Bulge and Storm Normandy, that was just one front. But the front that won the war was the war that Russia did, that Russia partnered with the world. And you don't want to bring them to the world stage? Please. Because they are communists? Please. That's the only reason. Because they were they could have been the second largest world power. Russia was the USSR. And the USSR was standing next to Britain, which was small. And they broke up the USSR in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan. All because they wanted to break up communism. They didn't want communism to last. They knew that China was communist. They knew that Russia was communist. They knew that some parts of Italy was communist. And communist was flourishing. But there was a struggle, there was a fight for world dominance, and capitalism and was the one that U.S. was propagating along with Great Britain. But hey, when you're losing that game and you want to be a foothold in the world on the global stage, what do? You create propaganda, and they've been at Russia for the longest. And Russia was communist up until the Great Wall, until they broke down the wall between East and West Germany, because West Germany was communist, or East Germany, one of them. But you heard Ronald Reagan tear down that wall or whatever.
So really, Russia should hold, really, if they know the truth about warfare and propaganda, they should really be the United States enemy.
That's right. That's right. But see, what you don't see is that Putin is one of the progenitors who wants to bring Russia back to the USSR. See, as a child, he resoundingly hated the fact that the U.S. broke up in NATO to break up Russia.
Right.
He's a proud Russian.
Right.
And they ain't do no harm to nobody. Russia ain't did no harm to nobody in its history. Read about them. Communism is not a bad thing. Socialism and communism is not a bad thing. The world was doing fine. The world was doing fine until Hitler, Germany, decided they wanted to do fascism, create a new fascism. Not communism, not socialism, but fascism. Superior race. And you can best believe the United States loved that shit. That's why they ain't put their feet too far up into the shit, because right here, a lot of them were given exile into the United States. A lot of them German soldiers were given exile into the United States. We had more Nazi Germany's living here in the 1930s after World War I, when they fought Germany. We had more German Nazis living here then.
So World War I, what was that about?
That was Germany. That was the first war against Germany. It was, the U.S. joined, but it was the World War I that involved Germany, and I can't remember the exact thing, but then the war broke out again in World War II. Look it up. What was the basis of World War I? And watch you see Germany. Germany was in it. I forget the reason why, but it was leading up to what Hitler was about to do.
Yeah, because I understand many of the German children from World War I were disenfranchised and ready for World War II.
That's right.
They definitely made the transition into World War II, whatever their play was, or their place was in that war. They were right for rearming themselves for the next war that Hitler set out for them in World War II.
That's right. That's what I believe. And there was some other stuff going on in there with I believe with if I'm correct, with Turkey, and it had something to do with some powers that be within East and West Germany, because East Germany and West Germany were involved in something about getting rid of the Jews. But
so Germany is the credit for the fall of the Roman Empire, the barbarians, and they infiltrated their ranks in their military.
Absolutely.
And then they diluted their military. Then finally they claimed the final battle over, I think, one of the Augustus seasons. And of course, we have remnants of the great battlefields where Roman soldiers were found by the thousands. So, but the
Yes, yes. I gotta look into that a little bit more. I used to know a lot about World War I, but it seems to be drawing a blank on me right now. But I know it was involving Germany and it involved Great Britain.
This Germanic race and this Roman Empire
Yeah,
seem to have a distinction historically in this world.
that's right.
Of course, the Roman Empire. We don't have a second. It's almost compared Roman Empire to what America looks like today in many ways.
Yes.
Particularly for its immorality and slavery.
Right.
And those who defeated them, they're pretty notorious too. The Germans. And we have, I guess, Trump is German, his ancestors, right?
Yes, and I think before they even called it Germany, it was the Visigoths, the Goths and the Visigoths, the east and the west. They were what they call what do you call the I forget the word, like they were like hordes. They were hordes. They would go across Europe and just battle for territory and land after the fall of Rome. They were called the Goths, the Visigoths and the Goths. I don't know how Germany came out of that, but these um, these like barbarians, that's what they were looked at as. There was an emergence of the barbarians trying to claim territory and going across Europe from east to west, just tearing up and taking land and women and things of that nature, and trying to gain territory. You had lots of them. You had the Germans, the Goths, the Visigoths, who were claiming to be the Germans, and then you had the Mongolians, hordes. You had uh, the British. They had a form of hordism. Um, and there was a bunch of them, all of them trying to claim territory after the fall of Rome.
Yeah. So we know that historically, in the medieval times, that racism and white culture, which is unknown to many people, was being promoted as the only civilized culture on earth. That was during the medieval times.
Now you're saying that the racism was not a in the picture at the time. The language in itself, the lexicon of race.
It was during the
It's around the 14th century.
yeah.
Yeah,
That time of race.
right.
Yeah, in fact, I guess it was mostly at that time because they had knights. Some of the knights were black. But what they were saying is that there was no really black culture, despite the presence of black knights who were in the medieval armies. But they started to teach during those times that the only culture that was any culture was white culture. That's a historical fact.
Okay.
To the 1400s, I guess, or 1600s.
Now the odd thing is that during these hordes, um, I'm not sure if any of them were in Africa. I'm not sure if any of the hordes were in Africa. I think the hordes were about gaining land and property and regions within Europe. The establishment of countries and regions. You have the Slavics, you have the Russians, you have the Germans, you have the French, you have the British, you have the Irish, you have the Mongolians, um, Austrians, the Polish. All these people were buying for territory and land under different. If you were the largest horde of barbarian, you could make people be under you. You could take over land and have people servitude towards you or be killed. the barbarian civilizations. That's how they were formed, how Europe was formed. Europe is the only continent like that, with all of those different factions of people and cultures. You could travel from Great Britain, all the way from Ireland, even further, from Ireland to Great Britain, all the way across the continent to Asia. All the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific on that one huge continent of Europe, which was part of Russia. Because if Russia, if I call the whole continent Russia, Europe, including Russia, that whole continent. From the top to the bottom to the top of Australia. From the top of Australia to the connection where Europe connects with the Mediterranean to Africa. That whole massive land right there is all of Europe, with different cultures in it: Germany, Polish, Slavics, Finnish, Irish, British, Turkish.
All of that.
Yes, all of that.
And of course, they had the most direct influence of the people known as the Middle East.
It would say the what?
The people known as the Middle East. Iran, those Middle Easterners.
Yeah, those aren't Middle East. Those are from the Ottoman Empire. Those are Turkish, and what do you call them? The Ottoman Empire, Turkish. What was the other one? That was the other one. It was sort of like Asian black. What was it called?
Asiatic black man.
No. They have a. I saw it in a write up, but also they did it in the movie 300. Remember the movie 300?
Yeah,
the Persians. So you had the Persians, you had the Ottomans, you had the and Asians and the Mongolians. So they weren't Middle Eastern. They were just a subset of below the Slavics, the white ones. Again, you had because they you got to understand the Pacific Ocean. Those people sailed, if they did. The Pacific Ocean breeds those brown skinned people, and they come in all different categories. Slavic. Even some Russians were brownish complexion. The more they went down towards, I've seen this before. There were some Asian-looking Russians. They wore the heavy fur coats, but they all look Asian. But they were, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Those are the Russians that mix with the Asians. You know what I'm saying? Part of the Ottoman and what's the other one we just said? From 300, from the movie 300? Yeah, the Persians. I believe a lot of Russians were from integrated with the Persians and the Ottomans.
Yeah, they started to come together because the Caucasian race is really biblically the tribe of Japan. So that whole group of people that you mentioned were really and then of course it speaks of Mag and Gog and Magog and
yes. That's right.
That whole, and of course, if you go back further, some make the connections with Cain and the distinctive complexion of white people as the mark of Cain. And as some of our scientists, basic that
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it is the behavior of the Germans and the Romans. And even in biblical history, the way that the Romans really are depicted in biblical history. They were some hell-of folk, man. And it took some hell-of folk to bring their ass down to them Germans.
Well, to be honest, the Germans were very barbaric, and they were the first to develop this stoic kind of arcane way of battle using metal. Because in Germany, they can, produce iron ore, and different types of steel, and they were able to come up and use fire and metal to create different types of weapons and machinery. And you can tell in their stoic nature because of cold climate, and that they are a people of arcane coldness. You know what I mean? They had some of the first weaponry in World War One that was astounding. You know, built in. They built shelters within mountains sides. They use concrete. I mean, when they thought of battle, I mean, when you look at storming Normandy, they had a fortress that was, I mean, almost like 10 feet thick of concrete. You know, and they knew what the hell they was doing. Even when they built their first car, Mercedes, like, you know, their stuff is it was ready for battle. The Italians couldn't even compete. The Italians built something, man, that when they started to join Germany in the war, Germany had them using their cannons. Them things are so small and weak and fragile. So, you know, there's a lot to go with the characteristic culture, cultural identity, how people's minds think is by the products they make.
Right.
You know, and Germany was one for constant barbarianism.
So you said something very important. The cars were made and built for war.
That's right. That's right.
And the Mercedes Benz.
That's right.
I got them sitting out there now. That thing, I don't know what to say about that damn thing. It's a 1999. It run like a 2021.
Yeah, run like a cannon. Run like a tank. It run like a tank.
And if you're right, if you run like inside a car,
Mm-hmm.
still, it ain't no car. That's not a car sitting back there. And I got the key right now. I go turn that thing on. That thing will idle for about 35 seconds. Then it'll tone down, and it's over.
Yep.
It's pointed where you want it to go.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And it'll go right now to San Diego if I put it in that direction. And it won't stop. It won't stop till I get there. If I point that car right now, and it's 20 years old, and I said, go to San Diego, that thing would go there, man, and it wouldn't stop till it got there.
There you go.
That's the truth. That's the absolute truth. And it's built like a tank. I'll take it to the shop.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on. That's my Lincoln legendary radio. I had it.
Yeah.
So I had a guy who was at Mercedes today. So he's selling one too. He want one. He's selling before an S430. And I've got to get rid of my two cars or something. The girl's taking all that land back as of March 1st.
Yeah, I'm not buying anything right now, man, till the center get open. I'm not buying nothing for a while.
Anyway, that makes a lot of sense because that car is 20 something years phone.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm thinking about is, he might, you go look at my car tomorrow, he might take it, give me his 2003 S430.
Yes.
Or negotiate that. He might take that BMW as a payment on it, no cash. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But
okay.
Anyway, to your point, them things, man, you know.
And you know, Russia don't make any automobiles. They made the Yugo, but it failed. But that was done by Italians. The Yugo was designed and manufactured by Italians.
That's very interesting. That's their problem. I wonder why.
Yeah, because they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the infrastructure, and they have crude oil. They don't have the best oil to keep and sustain. They get all their cars imported. Most of them come from Italy or Germany and from France. But they should have been a big player on that. They should have been a big player, but they can't. They're a natural resource. If you look them up, I don't think they have enough iron ore or the economy to be able to purchase steel and manufacture automobiles. But don't quote me on that. But I don't think they have a lot of natural resources. A lot of people suffering in Russia.
Yeah, there is. I know that. But the crime, all that,
Yeah, they have an underworld too. They have an underworld too. Russia's not what it used to be in the days of old, but they were more of an imperialist country, communist imperialism under Stalin. Well, no, Italy was under Stalin. This was um, no. This I'm going talking about going back to World War II. The leader was yeah. Yeah, Lenin. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So you had Stalin, you had Lenin, and you had who was the leader of China? These are the three big communists. It was Mao Zedong.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Mao Zedong, Stalin, and Lenin. And the world was two-thirds of the three quarters of the world was communism.
That I'm guessing because they were so lacking in resources, they could only promote imperialism, which is their own culture.
That's right.
Communism, and they didn't have much else to be a drummer. They didn't have no other platform.
Well, see, the world only knew communism. The world only knew communism. Communism was the Marxist. Karl Marx understood that was um, people worked a shared effort. Everybody was on an even playing field. You know, it wasn't until that the race for global power after World War One. It was a race for global power, and that's why you had World War II. And there were some agreements made that Britain would come out of colonizing its countries, and the U.S. Would then have the edge over becoming a global power. Because as long as Britain had their foot in these countries colonizing them, they were going to remain the leader. Because we left Britain to come over here. So what we decided after World War II, that you want us to come fight in this war, then you relinquish after 1940, when the war is over, you relinquish your stronghold on all the countries you colonized in Africa and India and anywhere else in the world. And when they agreed to that treaty, you saw Great Britain pull out of and England pull out of Africa. left all those countries in the 60s and the late 50s without resources, without anything, just left them independent. And this way you get um, Idi Amin and all these leaders pulling up that had no understanding of leadership because they were being ruled by Great Britain. So they point these leaders, and these leaders got greedy. The same what we talked about, that culture thing, where we become what we follow.
Right.
Well, that's what happened in those countries. That's why it took them 60 years to get their act together now and create the AU, African Union, because they just getting out from under the guise of the thinking and culture and indoctrination of Great Britain. And then they have to build their infrastructure. For decades, they didn't rebuild their infrastructure. They were getting loans from these countries who was their oppressor. The same country who oppressed them, they were getting loans from because Great Britain didn't move their land from those countries. They still had people there living their own land there. So the U.S. gave them grounds now to be a power player. And the first thing they did 40 years after that was begin to start targeting Russia. And they did it for years. They targeted Russia. They've tried to find ways to dismantle Russia and make it break Russia up into different countries like Yugoslavia and different countries within the USSR, Croatia, those different places. And they had a war. They had the Croatian War, which was part of the breakup of Russia. Moravia, all these different countries within that region started having wars in the late 80s and 90s. And you started getting people adopting kids in the U.S. from the wars that went on in Croatia and Bosnia and places like that. And the U.S. was part of that war. They had soldiers in that war. As the American soldiers say, they fought in Bosnia, Croatia, and once they broke up, once Ronald Reagan was able to successfully break up Russia and tear down the wall between Germany, East Germany and West Germany, you had the fall of communism, and so to speak, until till Gorbachev left. But Gorbachev, while he was in office, he didn't know that Putin was a young man at the time in the military and the CIA over there. They're equivalent to our CIA. He was like a little Hitler. He was like, we're not gonna have this. We're gonna bring Russia back. We're gonna be a world power. And that was Ronald Reagan. They made a treaty with Germany to tear down the wall between East and West Germany, and to break up Russia, and caused all kinds of, you know how the U.S. does. They send coups and jackals into these countries, and they create dissension, divide and conquer. That's how you do it. That's the normal strategy. And they went into Russia, and they went into these little countries like Croatia and Bosnia and created wars. And those wars went on for 10 years. Before you knew it, there was the fall. What's his name? Gorbachev decided to divide Russia, no longer call it Russia, and gave those little countries their independence, all because of Ronald Reagan and NATO.
So it would be safe to say that the U.S. had might and resources because of its development by the black states.
Say that again.
That the U.S. had might and the resources because of the development and its resources by the black states.
Well, what happened was U.S. doesn't do anything by itself. You got to understand the cowardness and the legitimacy that they must claim in order to do something to another country, because those countries are sovereign. So U.S. has to get NATO on board and charge Russia with a propaganda. But before they do that, they send jackals in. They send these high intelligent people to go in and create a problem so that they can solve a problem to prove or to substantiate their propaganda. So if Russia is refusing and they're maintaining their communistic stance, what you do is you stop countries from trading with Russia. That's first, you hit them economically. And then secondly, you starve the country of resources, and then those countries will start to have anger against their government. And once you got the people divided against the anger against the country, you lose the value. Then you send in jackals to create controversy, underworld, crime, mafia. Before you know it, people, you give them arms. You holler, oh, this country is mistreating them, and you start politicizing it. Before you know it, it's all over global news, and then you bring it into an issue with NATO. And then you make your problem statement. Russia needs to, communists no longer needs to survive because it's oppressing its people. This is the linguistical language that they use for propaganda. Once that propaganda is out there in the universe, and you start painting these pictures of a star and a hammer and a black shadows of old, and you say, this is dark and ugly, and Russia's right, and then people begin to believe that. NATO starts to take a stance, and you get 4 or 5 countries joining you. What do? You pull Russia to the table, and you say, well, if you don't want to come to the table to talk and agree to what we say, and we'll put sanctions on you. All these countries will put sanctions on you till you give in. And that's what. And Russia and Putin's been in power. Gorbachev was in power long enough, so he gave in. And there was a backlash in Russia because of that. And it still is a backlash. There's 2-party system. Matter of fact, there was a lot of murders and a lot of killing because Putin is a spy man. And any opposition party, he just jailed that opposition party guy that he tried to kill twice, and he didn't succeed. He just jailed him. And his wife is now taking up his baton. This is in the news this week. Yeah, they did. The guy returned. He was in exile because they tried to kill him. Putin tried to kill him, poisoning. You ever heard about that? He was the opposition party in Russia.
Right.
That's right. And Putin tried to poison him because Putin is the prime minister. He's the head boy. And this was the opposition party. It's like the Republican Democratic Party. This is the opposition party. They're trying to gain power and put Putin out. And Putin plays like Donald Trump. Except Putin is allowed to get away with poisoning people. If he don't like you, he'll poison you. He'll send his attack dogs at you. Say again?
What's their national aim?
We don't know. They just want to be they want it first. Number one, they don't want to be divided. They don't want capitalism. They don't want capitalism to rule. They want communism to rule. We can rule with communism and capitalism. But they don't have, so what they did was build up their military by becoming partners with China. They're friendly with China and Iran. And China and Iran have given them enough military secrets to build their own strong military. And Russia has a strong, strong military up in Iceland and up in the North Pole. They have ship ice cutters. They have marine ice cutters, man, and underground cities and all of that kind of stuff. They got their stuff up in the North Pole, and they can fuck the U.S. up anytime they choose to, and Canada. They got some heavy technological shit. Do a report on that. Do a Google report on that. Russia ain't joking. They got missiles that could maneuver, go around the globe and come back and land like a rocket. Just land like it took off. I seen the reports. I seen it. They spend a lot of their money in technology, but their people, they pretty much starving. They don't have much food. There's a lot of fish and vodka and whatever else they eat, but the climate is very cold. It's a four-season climate, but it's a four-season climate, but they're closer to towards North Pole than they are anything else.
Of Iran, Russia, China getting together.
They've been together. They've been together, brother. They've been together since the 90s. They've been together since the late 80s, early 90s. You're not going to hear Russia going against This is the reason why the U.S. tried to push Russia out of NATO and didn't invite them to the G7. The G8, it was a G7 because Russia wasn't there. But you want Russia to be part of NATO. And the reason why is because they could become a strong power, and if they become a strong power in that region, they could hit Britain. They could be a threat to Britain. They could be a threat to France. They could be a threat to Germany. And you don't want that on the chessboard. You don't want Russia being a strong power over the Middle East. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't want that on the chessboard because you got Russia, Iran, who's caught in the middle? Israel and Great Britain. You got Russia, Iran, and China. That's a flank. That's everything to the west. I mean, to the east. You got China, Asia to the east, China, and you got Russia to the north, and you got Iran to the southeast, and you got Israel in the middle. This is the reason why there's always conflict. Because if those three become very strong powers, look, Britain can't say shit. Britain can't say nothing. And then Russia has a way to attack us from Iceland and Greenland, or Iceland at least, and over to Greenland. And see, Finland is a neutral country, and Switzerland is a neutral country. But Russia gained power like that, and if Russia remained the USSR, US would not have power today in the global market, particularly if China. The reason why the U.S. did business with China was because they wanted to make friends with China so that they could have leverage to make China their friend against Russia. But they failed to believe that going at a communist country to deceive another communist country is wrong. And China didn't play that. China played the game with them, said, sure, come on, we'll make products for you. And the U.S. said, well, we pay a penny on a dollar. They said, fine, come on, pay us. After a while, the U.S. didn't realize that more and more companies found out they could manufacture stuff in the U.S. in China for cheaper. And then all of a sudden, they forgot about the real deal of why U.S. was in bed with China. And then they owed China so much money, it's pathetic. But it never stopped them from becoming communist. China is still a communist, capitalistic, socialist country. And now, I would say the first richest in the world. I would say the first richest in the world because we're losing ground to them. when it comes to riches and wealth.
The white man, he got outspent with China.
Say again?
The white man got outspent with China.
He got out tricked. He got outsmarted. And that's the cultural quality of China that I wish, and Koreans and Asians, that I wish American blacks would adopt. That look, it don't matter how much you make it. It matters what you do. It matters what the plan you have to do with the money you have. I have a client right now that is Asian, and I went online with them. They live in a cold ass apartment in Chinatown. A cold ass apartment with no heat, no nothing. They ain't paying no utilities. No utilities except internet, and they may be stealing that some kind of way, but they do that until they are able. Until they are able. They have a system in place where you come in on the ground floor, you do your struggle, and you save, and while the person above you in the pyramid is working hard to give you that, and then they move on to there, and you move up. But y'all live together, y'all save the scrinch and do whatever together. It builds unity, it builds community, it be a shared interest and shared effort. And blacks used to operate that way. They used to live in the house together. But what we started doing in a lot of ways was adopting what you just said earlier, a white culture. We started disbelieving in ourselves and wanting to be white and do everything white and think white and operate as a white person. We dropped it, we lost it, and now it's hard to put that back together, especially after they threw everything in the pot at us. They threw feminism, they threw radicalism, they threw gay, LGBT, drugs, pull a woman out, give her more money, jail the black man. They threw so much stuff at us, man. They said the value of a woman isn't in the kitchen. The value of a woman isn't raising children. It's in working in a career and getting a PhD. Don't care about your kids with DHS to take care of them. You know, and we got to catch up, man, because when you look at it from a global perspective, we're not doing much, not in this country, because we're consumers in this country. That's all we are in this country. We're consumers. Some of us have ways of making a living by being entrepreneurs, but we ain't manufacturing nothing that will get us global power. We play a social economic game on this chessboard. We play a social economic capital. Social capital is what we can contribute to a campaign and what we can voice. That's social capital. If we learn to look at our social capital as power and uniting and look at how we are consumers and use our consumerism to our advantage, then we can have economic power. Economic power isn't in the numbers of how many black folks spend on the Dow Jones every year. Economic power is what we don't spend as a body of people. And we decide, since we are the largest consumers, how about being the largest non-consumer and watch what would happen to the market, particularly at this time where the global market is not buying the dollar. It would put us even in a more, it would force these ignorant elites to finally realize that there are about 20 of you who have all the money in the United States. And what does that say? What does that say about the world we live in? If only 20 motherfuckers own all the money in the United States, they own the US economy. What does that say about them? As opposed to other countries where there are thousands of people in communist countries living well, not starving, but living well, and understand that living well means is a good thing. They have a value about family. Their marriage rates are up higher than ours. We have a torn infrastructure. Even a family system structure is torn. The economic system is torn, disparate. All the money goes to one lopside of the scale. It's an ugly picture, and Black folk are part of it because we are the consumer sect. And when they talk about consumerism, they talking about us. It's a science. What are we buying? What are Black folk buying based on their income? What's the highest paid percentage of income of Blacks? Go on blackstatistics.com. I think it's about 2%. 2% of the Black population make over $100,000, six figures. Out of 40 million, 50 million Black people, only 1.2 million of them make over $100,000. What does that say? What does that say about our consumerism? It says that 98% of us is just that. That's right. 98% of us making under $75,000 a year. We got to teach our people to get incorporated, because that's how you get away with paying taxes. You got to incorporate yourself. Yeah, and this type of consumerism has a global aspect about it. Because when you put everything in its perspective, then people can learn. What we talked about today is why I called it. To talk about what matters. Yes. And what you have in you matters. What you just said today matters. And it's what needs to be talked about, not about how you get your wife for Valentine's. That's right. That's all well and good. That's right. But unfortunately, I had a day off. I can actually begin to think. It's nothing that has nothing to do with them bad people and their great selves. That's right. And so I picked up 5 books that I haven't looked at or getting nothing from with them. Then I spent 10 hours on the internet just re-educate myself about what's going on around me, trying to get a handle and get off to what do you call it, the wheel. Yeah, get off that vicious cycle. Right. That mousetrap wheel. Get off that mousetrap wheel and get into the game. It keeps me going, man, and so much work, you start getting the systems. Yes. I'm in such a horrible system. I don't have a therapist, got a mental health worker. I got to find the time to do the therapy, divide it with the inexperienced person, incorporate her job, which is part of the equation of the setup. But then the CPH is not there to supervise their ignorance. And the work is horrific, the load is horrific, the schedule is horrific, the quality of time you can give each client is horrific. So right. I'm in the worst of the worst in West, as we well know. Right. And I managed it, but it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot for us today. And then for African Americans today and people of color, it takes a lot for us today. But I believe with the resilience of us as a people is enormous. I believe that. And it's people like yourself, that continue to educate people in the best way you can. There'll be people who say, oh, well, you can't educate everybody. Those kinds of people need to stay out of the realm of knowledge, because people who have knowledge and people who want to help make some change in society and perpetuate knowledge, they look at those people as useless. People who make excuses for everything. Well, black people this, and they every time you say something to them, they say, well, people ain't going to do this or people ain't going to do that. Or, well, the world ain't going to do it. Forget about that. Do what you're called to do and touch the people you're supposed to touch. That creates the metaphysical continuation of knowledge. You don't want to stop. You don't want to stop. You want to keep going, even in the midst of all the doubt and trepidation, the whataboutism, all of that. You can't stop. You can't stop because of that. You can't justify your purpose by accepting doubt.
Right.
And we all have a lot to do, man. And me and you have been around this thing for half a century, going on maybe 3/4 soon. And we got a few more summers. We got maybe, hopefully, Lord will bless us with 30 more summers. And when you look at it, we got a lot to do. I'm doing it. I'm doing it every day, man. I'm writing for that newspaper, and I'm sending out these live streams on YouTube. And people are responding. People are responding, and they're getting enlightened. I don't care about the ones who don't. They'll get it. They'll get it some other way.
Right. You are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just think, for me to call you and say, I got a concern that things that need to be talked about aren't being talked about, being valued. And I would have never thought it was tied in the way it's tied in.
Right.
But I can't think about that deeply. Yeah. I just don't have the time between church and home and bills and job and doing everybody's job. So much of the vision,
Right.
That's hostility up the chain. Because, they're saying that they're being treated hostilely by the CDH. Meanwhile, their whole system is hostile, and so are they. They're caught up in that white man syndrome as well, where it's dog eat dog. I'm thinking that.
Well, I like the concept. I like the concept that you brought forth today, because I wasn't thinking about it in that sense. I had thought about it intuitively a while back, but when you talk to people, you help bring out that when you said, African Americans have washed themselves in white culture and thinking and their identity, their cultural identity, and they can't seem to unwash themselves from it. And that is in the way that they think, people, places, and things about the world around them. They have lost their own authenticity, cultural authenticity.
We have cultural authenticity, and usually for nothing, or what they call the Bible for porridge, out of beans.
Mm-hmm. But we're working out. We're going to work it out. We're going to work it out, man, because you brought a prevailing concept, man, that doesn't get talked about that much in that term, and I'm going to be making sure I shine a light on that and get us to deconstruct white ideological frameworks from our minds and our behaviors.
At this time, I mean, it's a pressure. Everybody's not subjected to that, but that's actually happening, But I just look at the pressure now. They cut your fucking head off to try to flex. That's what
yes.
That's sort of what that's what the cross is. Think about the cross. The cross actually represents Rome's ability to crucify your aim.
Yes.
And yes, it does. And so about the cross is a symbol, but for Rome it was a political symbol. And it meant that if you cross me, I will come and hang you up, I'll put nails in your feet and in your hands, and I will stab a sword through your bottom, and you're going to hang there until you die, naked and ashamed. So don't ever.
Right. 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 Well,
now they're saying, you know, like it's not the well, crucify or kill you, come to your house, right? And kill our own. Anybody who ain't fast, down with the king, kill them too.
yes.
And it's just bad. God brought in the down
and we see that barbarianism today. We see it today. It was carried out on the White House. They came with axes. They came with all kinds of weapons, pitchforks, and it was just like a barbarian hordes. It was like from the Gothic age or something. And this kind of we can't have fear. I mean, those people act like they were fearful in a place that was supposed to be the most powerful and most protected place, and it was made into a movie. Basically, it was made into a movie, and Donald Trump just got credits for it. And they're going to run it. The media is going to run it on Channel 12, on PBS, and people are going to see it. It's going to go down in history like they've been showing Hitler's movies since the 1940s. Ever since I was a kid, I could see them every day on Channel 12. Hitler. It's like they glorified it. In the sense of trying to not glorify it, they're going to be glorifying it. But they won't tell the story about Oklahoma bombings and all the other bombings and terror. They won't air that on television. But they air their sort of like this cognitive dissonance that they tend to wallow in that kind of destruction and dissonance. You know, they wallow in it. They glorify it. You know, and they want to put that into our framework so that we can somehow mix it in with our thinking and begin to regurgitate it in some kind of logical way where it becomes part of us. Oh, that's the American way. You know, I agree with them. And then people arguing amongst each other. I agree with that. No, I don't agree with it. I don't agree. And that keeps the division. That shit was atrocious what they did. But it's not new to us. It's not new to us. It's what goes on in history. If you look at white history, just pull blacks out of the history and just look at white history before slavery. It's a history of, that's right. It's a history. That's right. Yep. Yep, 1776.
Yeah, and to your point, just like in the movie Avatar, it says, I'm going to put a racial indentation in your mind that you'll never forget.
That's right.
That's right.
And that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to implant something in our minds that we would never forget, particularly Black folk. They want us to see that this is what a real riot looks like, not tearing up buildings in Center City. We're gonna do a peaceful protest this way. We want to show you what it really looks like. We're gonna beat up the cops. You know, y'all Black folk don't know how to beat up no cops. And we can come with arms and guns and weapons, and y'all can't. See, but that's the way I'm interpreting it.
Way to manifest. It's like how people manifest that was allowed to happen.
That's right. The psychology of white folk allowed that to happen. The passiveness, the privilege, the laziness of privilege, and the taking for granted of privilege allowed that to happen. And know what? They fine with it. They came right back 10 minutes later and did the damn swearing in or whatever they had to do of Biden. Anybody else would have shut it down for the day to process that. They came back in after a person had been shot and a police officer had been killed. They came right back in like if nothing ever happened. and took a vote on the floor. If that ain't cognitive dissonance, I don't know what is. If that ain't cultural trauma, misguided trauma, they're getting used to trauma. What's the message that you send people when you talk about trauma psychologically? You just sent a message that it don't matter. This is a normal traumatic situation. We deal with trauma every day. We normalize it. We just normalize an insurrection, a traumatic insurrection on the White House in this nation. We just normalized it and came right back. That's like getting your ass beat by your parents who abuse you, and you come back and give them a kiss and act like it's just normal. It's just normal for your parents to do that to you, and then let them off the hook, and then let him off the hook.
That was another added layer, but they let him off the damn hook.
Yep. Now they added to the cognitive. They doubled down on the cognitive dissonance. They doubled down on the ignorance, and they call that resiliency. That's not resiliency. That's not resiliency. That's sedition. That's sedition to the highest form.
It's psychological warfare if you make it a strategy.
That's right.
That's a hell of a psychological advantage.
Imagine what that. That's right. Imagine what it says to our children. Imagine what it says to the young people. Damn, growing up in COVID, you got white people roaming the street with weapons and storming the White House and beating up cops, but yet black folk get shot in the street by cops. What kind of a quagmire and paradoxical relationship is that message? That's a weird message. So weird. And then you let the top notch, the head of the beast, continue to live. And you let his minions like what's his name? What's the one who was a South Carolina senator? No, not Graham. The one who came out, who came out yesterday on the news. He said he's going to visit Trump. What's his name? Just numbers on the tip of my tongue. But he comes out. He's a minion. He comes down, and he has been eaten by. He has drank the potion and the elixir of this type of ignorance. He can't even come back now. He don't even know what he says half the time. He says one thing half the time that I disagree with this and this, and then he turns around and it's like an addict. He's like an addict and an abuser. And it says a lot about his psyche. He's like an addict, and when he don't get his fix from Trump, he turn on him. But then once he get his fix from Trump, he keep coming back and tell Trump what he want to hear. It's a sickness. And I don't care what people say, these people, this culture, it's a sickness. It's a real sickness.
It is. Even his desperation and fear for sickness. I should say desperation, hate, and fear.
Yes.
That's the pathological. That's at the pathological center of this for whatever reason.
But if you're so confident in your Constitution, so confident in your whiteness, and so confident in America, why is all of this happening?
Right.
Because poor people ain't making it happen. Poor working class people ain't making this happen. These same white folks are in the same boat as us.
Right.
Except for the one who has a doctor's wife or whatever. But most of them, black folk been screaming this for 400 years. But now you want to scream that you oppressed and you ain't never been arrested. You ain't nobody in your family ever been killed. But for the mere fact that somebody got voted that you didn't like, you just tear down the house and murder people. This is not something that we should be playing with. Black folk, we should not adopt or take on this white ideological framework of this event and internalize it in a white way. We should be looking at it from our cultural perspective. Because they just went right back to the meeting, swept up the glass, picked up the dead bodies, wiped up the blood, and ain't mentioned nothing about bringing the parents of that officer or his wife or whoever to that impeachment. Nothing. I had nobody give credence to that person who died, who got shot or hit in the head with the fire extinguisher and died. Nothing. These people are sick. Tell yourself doing the people's work. The people's work should have had the military lock them people down. Some people went to hotels and had breakfast the next morning and went the hell on home. Lindsey Graham is his name. That's his name, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is on drugs. He's got to be. Because that kind of weird personality, addiction, codependency on Trump is ridiculous. He couldn't wait till the impeachment hearing to get on television the next day and spew more vicious energy into the air to keep this thing going. Instead of him saying something like, well, I hope we can move on now from here and try to mend this country, he comes out with more vitriol because he wants it to continue. So they speak out both sides of their mouths. At one moment they say, well, why are we going to go through the with the impeachment? Why can't we just move on and mend this country? As soon as the impeachment is over and the truth is told about what he did, which you all witnessed, you can't deny it, you want to say, all right, let's continue the vitriol. We're going to impeach Kamala Harris, governor of New York, the Republican Party in New York State, talking about they want to impeach Governor Cuomo. Donald Trump talking about he want to run for president again. Talking about he wanted his sister, his daughter-in-law to run for state house because a Republican voted in that same position against Donald Trump. They keep the vitriol going. So Democrats better wake up.
You think it's power and money? Think that the white man can. He's done everything he can to get it, but he can't live without it. I think it's.
Well, that's an interesting question because no matter how much money he's got, he's taking it out of everybody's hands, and only 20 people in this country got the most of it. So 20 people got the most of it, and the millions of other people don't. I mean, hundreds of millions of people don't have what they have. What does that say? What does that look like politically? It looks like a monarchy, right? It looks like it don't look like a democracy. Don't look like a democracy to me. It looks like several kings got all the money and control all the economy and all the markets. That don't sound like got us begging at the fighting and all of this. Democrats are liable too. The only thing that could change this is the big business. And we ain't gonna rely on big business, but if big business wants to look at who's consuming product and say, listen, I don't want to tie myself to Trump. I'm not giving the Republicans until they come mid-center. And unless they come mid-center, I will fund a mid-center Republican, one who is not radical, but one who wants to see progress. Because if this goes on any longer, folk are going to be poor. And not only will you see that certain sect that rushed the White House, you will see a whole nation rush the White House. That was just a small sect of white people complaining about they ain't got jobs. Well, black folk ain't take them jobs from you. White rich people took those jobs from you and took them overseas for cheap labor. So don't blame us. But if big business wanted to play a big part in this, they could change the tide. They could say who they are putting their money behind for improvement, progress, not some radical thinkers like Donald Trump. Don't put your money behind him. But they did it, and see what they got. They got a messed up economy. And they want us to believe that it's still a good economy. This is a fucked up nation with a fucked up economy. People are dying every day of COVID, and people are killing themselves. People are robbing because they don't have money. People are in the streets in the cold, homeless, and they robbing people. And they killing people. People on drugs to try to soothe the pain of everything that's going on in the chaos. There are only a few sane people of us, and some of us are about to lose it too. So I say, hold on, raise your level of thinking, and get in this game. Get in this game.
That is the truth. That's what we call the truth.
Thank you, Martin.
And that's exactly what we need to have. But the truth is sets you free.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you got to fight. You got to fight. Huh? You got to fight for that truth. You want to fight for truth to set you free, you got to fight. They showing us how they fight. And ironically, Martin, they are tearing themselves up internally. The Republican Party is tearing themselves up internally. They are. They're ripping themselves apart because of their far right extremism. See, people, natural psychology tells us people can only take but so much. Even dissident people can only take but so much. When everything else falls out around them, after a while, they're going to have to drop to their knees and say, well, what the fuck? This shit isn't working. I've lost everything. And that's where we're headed. You can't take anything more from the public. People are dying. What more are you going to take from us? We have no schools. We have no teachers. We have no place where kids can learn and grow except in the home now. They can't go outside. They can't. People are dying. And I'm not saying that in a sense of fear. I'm speaking rhetorically and I'm speaking figuratively and literally. People are dying inside, emotionally, physically, economically, intellectually, relationship-wise. They are dying. People are hungry for relationships. I look on Facebook and people are making themselves up and, they're trying to draw attention to themselves. They're lonely. They want somebody. Men and female, they want somebody to hold, want somebody to talk. If this is what COVID does, bring us back to some normalcy, some real dignified culture and authenticity of culture and value, so be it. So be it. But you better be in this game because you're going to be lonely. You're going to die lonely if you're not in this game. You got to find out what you can do. You got to find out what you can do. What is your calling? How can you help? How can you provide some hope and some vision for somebody?
Yeah. That makes a whole concept what you just said. But when you step back from that, you do have to stay in the game.
Yeah.
That's your hope. And ask yourself how.
Yeah.
under those circumstances.
Dig deep and ask yourself how. What can I do? What talents do I have? What is my spirit telling me? What is the universe calling me to do? Dig into your spirit, dig into yourself. Stop looking in the mirror and wanting somebody to love you. Love yourself, find your purpose, and people will follow.
Yes, they will.
People will follow. You will find what you're looking for. Get out of that smoke and mirrors. Get out of the dream world. Get out of the look at me, I'm somebody. You ain't somebody till you did something for somebody. Get up and do something for somebody. Find yourself first and then use your talents and skills and dreams and aspirations and intuition to develop ideas to move you forward, to touch other people's lives and stop remaining separated and isolated. Use technology to do it. If you can't do it right now by touch and feel, use technology. Reach some souls that way. We're here for a reason. It's here for a reason. You ain't got to die a slow death. If you're gonna die, die for a reason, die for a purpose.
Right, right, that's right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, you said it.
Well, my friend, it was great always talking to you, the Dr. Martin Wright.
You said it.
The Dr.
Yeah.
Martin Wright, the Pastor Martin Wright, 46th Street Baptist Church, Philadelphia, PA.
Yeah, man. I need to make that happen. That's for sure.
That's right, man. Start getting this message out, brother.
Yeah, it's very important. And it's the time.
People
That
people want to hear the truth.
they do.
People want to be woken up. People want to be shaken up.
Right. Wow.
Well, until next time, my brother.
All right. All right. Well, I'm going to take all this into a bank.
Good. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.